So I wanted to show a more finalized version of the sew that chain on the left. So I added a little bit more to it to kind of complete the whole process. For one, I added an extra outcome that is increased household awareness of the importance of good infant and young child feeding practices. So awareness is often the very first outcome that happens. So in this process, we have the activity that there is education that happens in the household where women are taught about how to properly do infant and young child feeding, which then leads to an increased awareness. So once they are aware, then they can actually start implementing changes. Awareness comes first. A lot of times the temptation is to put awareness at the end or even as a goal of raising awareness, but that's really the first thing that we want to happen is people are aware of things because it's out of awareness that they can change. So we have increased awareness so that there's an increase in the number of mothers requesting nutrition counseling. And I changed the word from receiving to requesting because that's going to be the change that happens. Once they are aware, then they will request additional counseling. Now from here I have a bit of an assumption that you can't see, but that those of us who are familiar with the program are going to be familiar with. And that is that we already know that if somebody requests nutrition counseling, that we are going to send a counselor to their house. So I didn't put that anywhere on the sew that chain because it's not necessary for us. The assumption is the request will trigger a household visit, and then that household visit will have outcomes that come out of it. So this is again the mothers report increased milk production because now they understand how to breastfeed and that they have an increase in confidence. And you'll see that there's a bunch of arrows here to kind of show a little bit more direction about where these are going. So with the women requesting nutrition counseling and receiving that, we see that there are basically three more midterm outcomes that come out of that. So the two being right here, the milk production and the confidence. And then the third one addresses inappropriate complementary feeding practices. And this helps cover the children who are over the age of 6 months because the previous sew that chain that I had worked on pretty much only looked at infants. So I wanted to make sure I was including the other children who are part of IYCFE programs. So the two arrows here indicate that these two things can impact each other, but they can also be exclusive, that a woman may not need confidence or she may not need to increase milk production. They can happen together or they can happen independently of each other. But either way, those two outcomes will then lead to a decrease in purchases of breast milk substitutes because women will be able to produce enough milk that they don't feel the need to buy a substitute, and also that they'll have the confidence in their ability to feed their baby enough on their own. Also, again, this will help lead to a decrease in inappropriate complementary feeding because children who are under 6 months old should not be getting any complementary feeding. They should be exclusively breastfed. So as you can see, this outcome on decrease in household purchases of breast milk substitutes also leads to a decrease in inappropriate complementary feeding because if they're not giving substitutes, then they're not also getting complementary feeding that is not helpful for the baby. So those outcomes then, as you can see, the sew that, the decrease in household purchases of breast milk substitutes means so that there's an increase in the number of babies 0 to 6 months exclusively breastfed, as well as the decreasing the inappropriate complementary feeding will also increase the number of babies that are exclusively breastfed. So the complementary feeding then goes into a more longer term outcome of decreasing MAM and SAM, which are two types of malnutrition in children 6 to 23 months. So again, I had left out this older age group in my first outcome map. And so I wanted to make sure that I was including some outcomes related to them, even though our emphasis is on infants. So we will see The long-term impact is that we have a decrease in malnutrition in these different age groups, which ultimately leads to our two goals, that all infants are exclusively breastfed and that we eliminate malnutrition cases in Kutupalong camp. These goals are not necessarily finalized right now. They are still in rough draft form because I don't know if I want to focus only on Kutupalong camp. There are several camps in the area. Or if I want it to be more broader like the one on the left. But that's something that will be finalized with some other actors and coordinators in the organization. So I just wanted to show you, again, part of the process and some of the thinking behind what goes into creating these chains and where there's areas of improvement, and how this process, again, is very helpful for being able to do that. You can quickly add in new outcomes. You can take ones out that don't work right. You can switch them around. I added these arrows just to help clarify a little bit about what is going on, but hopefully this helps you see how this process works and gives you some ideas of how you can be building your outcome maps.